next to me earlier. But Sheriff Cassidy also went with us. Patty was with us. We've been down to the border. You've heard their report about it. I might touch on it a little bit more about what's happened since then. But what I wanted to get at was something very simple, very straightforward about why this is happening in our southern border. And the answer is this. They use illegal immigrants to calculate how many legislative seats we're going to have in the Congress. They use these illegal immigrants to calculate how many electoral votes there will be in the United States. You can talk about, oh, that's a conspiracy theory or whatever, but we proved it's no longer a conspiracy theory, it is a conspiracy. I was able to put that to the floor. Every single Democrat voted to continue to count illegal migrants. Think about this. Which states are losing population because of the terrible policies? It's these blue states like New York, like Illinois, like California. Where do they situate the sanctuary cities? You don't have to think too hard about that either. It's New York City, Manhattan, it's Chicago, it's Los Angeles, it's San Francisco. So if a person comes into our country illegally, they're more likely than not hoping to go to a place that's promised not to enforce the immigration laws. In fact, a place that's promised to give them more benefits and housing. We got one of the Democrat representatives on the record, on TV. She said the quiet part out loud. She said, I need these illegals to keep my district. She's in New York, Brooklyn. Interestingly, the exact same district that Chuck Schumer was a congressman from in the beginning. And you all remember what happened in that district at James Madison High School? They kicked the kids out, told them to study by Zoom so they could put illegal migrants into that school. That's Chuck Schumer's high school. Yeah, this is how crazy it's gotten, and this is how power thirsty they are. After our trip to the border, and I don't want to reiterate everything you all already heard 2 weeks ago, but Michael Sullivan, my state director, and I went to visit with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. We wanted to share with them what we'd seen down there. We wanted to find out what they were seeing here. They gave me some data. It ended in 2021. We told how many drug overdoses were happening in Tennessee and how many people were dying from drug overdoses per year. In 2021, I divided the number by 365. We were losing 11 children a day dying from drug overdose. Another 86 people are overdosing and not passing away that time. Think about it, 86 overdoses, 11 deaths a day in 2021. It's probably up over 100 now. Because the trend line's right, Sheriff, the trend lines are, it's just getting worse. They're willing to do this to our nation. And I'm sure that you heard the description of what we saw down there 2 weeks ago. You had a rancher there we went to visit, and he caught 15 Syrians on his property. Now, they weren't going for asylum where you can turn yourself in and just say, I fear. That way they get a fresh set of clothes, they get a telephone, they get some walking around money, some cash, they get a free ticket to wherever it is they want to go. That's the Biden immigration plan. If you don't want to be caught, you come the way these guys are coming on his property. 15 Syrians. What the hell are they doing here in America? And why are we letting this happen? And very close to where he caught these people, we saw what they call comfort stations. These are our tax dollars at work. These comfort stations have cell phone chargers, water, sometimes they have snacks, sometimes they don't. That's to facilitate the illegal migration of these people in. They need those chargers to recharge their cell phones because the cartels use what they call pin drops on a GPS system to show them the way to get to their ride deeper into the country. What do we have 20,000 Chinese crossing the border in California for? Looked at the photos of those people that tore down the fence. You just saw that, right? They all looked to me, males, between the ages of 18 and 30, somewhere thereabouts. This is frightening. And to think that something's not going to go wrong is ludicrous. So I went and sat down with the director of the TBI. When we got back in, those cartels, those Venezuelan gangs, they're operating here in Tennessee. They partnered up with gangsters from up north. They're running drugs from Memphis to right up here. They're poisoning our children. They're trafficking in human beings. I won't go through the details that they've told us about. It's horrible what what's happening to these young girls is horrible. And the Biden administration is willing to look the other way and do all of this because they want the power from the Electoral College. They want to backfill the loss of people that would otherwise happen. If you calculate how many congressional seats would be accounted for by the 10 million people that have gotten here since Joe Biden took office, that's 13 congressional seats. You think about the balance of power in the House right now, he's down to 1 or 2 votes. I mean, this really does matter. We'll see how close the Electoral College is in this race. That's what this is about. And we've got to stop it. We've got to stop it. I'm optimistic that we can. But that's going to happen in November. I just sat down with President Trump's campaign team last Thursday and went through the state-by-state polling numbers. If the election were held today, there is no question he would win, and not just win a little bit, he would win in a landslide in the Electoral College. They will do everything they can to stop that. You know that. But every time they do something to him, weaponizing the legal system, 91 indictments, his numbers go up and Joe Biden's goes down. And I think there's a simple reason for this. There's a simple reason that we're responding this way, because Americans fundamentally want to see a fair system. And they see how unfair this is. It's dreadfully unfair. I think Americans also see how bad Joe Biden has managed the country, or mismanaged is probably the better word. But if you think about it, since he's come into office, he dumped all that stimulus money into the economy, running inflation up. He waged a war on the oil and gas industry here in America. That drives up energy prices, not only here, but around the world. And when you drive energy prices up, think about the second largest producer of energy, Vladimir Putin. Who benefits from that? When you think about what the Biden administration has done, here domestically, nothing on crime. Crime's still going up. I mean, we're lucky to be from here in Tennessee. But crime's going up in these cities. It's just out of control. So you've got these illegal migrants coming in. You've got crime out of control. You've got inflation out of control. Americans are hurting. And what does Joe Biden do? Riding around the country touting Bidenomics. They're so out of touch, it's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. And then around the globe, you think about what's happening right now in the Middle East. I'm going to tell you a little story so you can see why I'm so upset about this. When I served in the Trump administration, one of my jobs was to get the Japanese government to stop buying Iranian crude oil. That was when we were imposing the maximum pressure. Do you remember this, the maximum pressure campaign? President Trump tore up the Iran deal. It was a terrible deal. We imposed maximum pressure. I went to Prime Minister Abe and I said, I need you to stop buying Iranian crude oil. He reminded me that Japan had gone to war over access to energy in the past. That's true. We went through a lot of discussions, and eventually they agreed to stop buying it. We did that around the world. And we brought Iran's coffers down to below $8 billion. Below $8 billion. It's a large number, but not for a country that size. They were broke. Hamas and Hezbollah were widely reported as being broke in 2019 and 2020. Joe Biden comes into office, the first thing that they do is stop enforcing the sanctions. The sanctions I worked my heart out to get imposed, they stopped enforcing them. The money starts flowing to Iran. By May of 2021, you had rockets coming out of Gaza and Israel. The 11-day war, you all remember that. This is being funded by the Iranians. Joe Biden is allowing this to happen because he's trying to do everything he can to repair the Iran deal that was a signature event for Barack Obama. They don't care what happens to the rest of the world. You think those rockets that the Houthis are firing were manufactured by them? No, Iran. The funding comes from Iran. The know-how, the training, all from Iran. They've destabilized the entire Middle East. The shipments in the Red Sea, down massively. The cost to ship, up massively. It's going to create even more global inflation. And now the Iranians are selling more crude than they've ever sold in their lives. This is thanks to Joe Biden. Look at Russia. When Biden comes into office, he decides he's going to overthrow or waive the waivers that have been imposed by the United States Senate on a bipartisan basis on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. He waives it for nothing, just trying to show the Germans that he's a nicer guy than Donald Trump. Putin gets this gift. It's a geopolitical strategic weapon, if you think about it, to gain control over the flow of natural gas into Europe, into Western Europe. It was a gift. Then Biden goes to what's called the New START Treaty. Trump would not sign that treaty because it wasn't reciprocal. It covers 92% of our nuclear arsenal, only 50% of Russia's. Trump said it's got to be reciprocal before we would ever sign. No one would sign a deal like that. You're a business person. Joe Biden extended it for 5 years with no changes. Putin could not sign it fast enough. And then you remember this too. Russian hackers hit the Colonial Pipeline. It affected us right here. And you all know what the consequence was for that. Nothing. Nothing. Vladimir Putin looks at Joe Biden. He sees what Joe Biden did in Afghanistan, and he's thinking, I'm going to do in 2022 what I did in Crimea in 2014. I privately called the White House. I said, you guys have to impose sanctions now before Putin moves in. They wouldn't do it. It would be too escalatory. You all know what happened next. Putin invades. Joe Biden gets on the phone with Zelensky and says, we're here to offer you a ride home. We'll facilitate the surrender. He does a lot of talk right now, a lot of tough talk right now about this. But the Biden national security strategy is a weak one in every dimension. Let me tell you what we were doing in the Trump administration, and I think you all know this. I'm the senior most person serving in federal office right now who was a member of the Trump administration. I helped President Trump put his cabinet together. I was on the transition team responsible for personnel there. And I've been very close with him for years. We had a plan in place that was working regarding our own energy exports. LNG is a powerhouse advantage for America. We can produce more than we consume here. We can become an exporter of LNG. In fact, we were. And I persuaded the Japanese to put in place billions of dollars of investment in terminal facilities for LNG here in America and in Japan. Who were they buying from before? The Russians and the Qataris. They needed to buy our energy. That's a strategic linkage. It's very, very important. The next phase of this plan was to build what they call transshipment facilities, so that Japan would buy far more LNG and we would ship that into Southeast Asia. Think about this. American energy going throughout the region to counter China's Belt and Road. This is smart. This is how business people think, right? Joe Biden comes in and destroys any prospect of this happening. He's now put a ban on LNG exports. He did this because some 25-year-old Twitter kid started burning them up on the airwaves. And they bring this kid into the White House and he says, well, I'll get all the environmentalists against you if you don't shut down LNG exports. And they did it. If you think about what's happening in the Middle East right now, Chuck Schumer trying to suggest the ouster of the president, the duly elected president of our strongest ally in the Middle East. He's trying to get Bibi out of office. I mean, that's tampering in another nation's elections when you think about this. For the leader of the Senate to come and call for that, and then Joe Biden to agree with it. Someone from over there told me, you know what the two-state solution is? It isn't a state for Israel and a state for the Palestinians. It's Michigan and it's Minnesota. That's the two-state solution they're working on because they're worried about November, and they've got to have Michigan to win it. That's why they're doing this. Again, get back to the root of it. It's all about their power at any cost. Whether it's destabilizing the Middle East, undercutting Bibi Netanyahu, or hurting us right here at home. It's all about them staying in power, creating more dependency or whatever they can to get more people in here that will support their regime. And we have got to stand up to it. I'm optimistic, though, because I'm from Tennessee. And our state is unique in many, many ways. But we're winning right now as a state. We're a model for the nation. You all may remember this. It wasn't always so, but I'm so pleased to have our legislators here because they've made a huge difference in creating an environment here in Tennessee that's good for business, it's good for families, and people want to be here. And I was the head of economic development for the state for a few years. When I came in and took office, our state's unemployment rate was above the national average, and wage growth and GDP growth were below the national average because we had just taken over from a Democrat named Phil Redison. And by the end of 4 years, we'd become the #1 state in the nation who created jobs through foreign investment, and the only state in the nation to be named the State of the Year for Economic Development 2 years in a row. It had never happened before. Democrats had a press conference. How can you be for jobs when you do this? We're not an employment agency, the state government. Our job was to facilitate more economic growth and development, and that's exactly what we did. That's putting conservative principles to work. And those conservative principles are working very well in Tennessee, and we should just stand as a beacon to the rest of the nation. And as we see people move here, I think that underscores how well we're doing as a state. We just need to make sure we stay strong, conservative, and competitive. And you all do a lot to do that. So I want to thank you all for your efforts to keep us safe, strong, and conservative. We're going to have a great opportunity in November, though. Not only do I feel good about where President Trump is right now in the numbers, and I'm sure they're going to do anything else they can from a legal standpoint to try to stop him and get him off the ballot, but I'm very optimistic about what's going to happen in the Senate. And the report here is something pretty unique. This time, every 2 years, a third of the Senate comes up for re-election. This time, Democrats have to defend 23 seats, more than twice as many seats as we have to defend. So the resources are going to be spread thin. Three of those Democrat senators are serving in red states right now: West Virginia, Montana, and Ohio. Joe Manchin in West Virginia has already seen the writing on the wall. He's given up. That takes us from 49-51, which is where we are today, to 50-50 right there. I feel very good about Montana, about Ohio, and Pennsylvania's got a real strong shot too. And I've been working on a ground game operation that we have been funding. We've already started in one state. But to try to beat them at their own game, I hate all this early voting and all the stuff that they do. But if we're not playing by the rules that are established, we're going to lose again. It happened in 2022. I don't want to see that happen again. And we're going to get the Senate back. I feel very good about that. And I think the way we get the nation back is to stand strong and stand on our principles. And we can never forget that we are the most exceptional nation in the world, despite what the media wants to tell us, despite what the Democrats might say as they condemn us, call us racist, white supremacist, whatever we're saying. If you have an R behind your name, they're going to try to smear you. Remember, we are the strongest and most exceptional nation in the world. I'm doing this to make sure that my kids, and perhaps someday grandkids, can inherit that exceptional nation. What you all do will make sure that we pass along that birthright to them. But we got to stand strong right now because we're at an inflection point as a nation. We're at an inflection point where we need strong people serving, strong people fighting, and people who know what's made this nation great. So thank you all for what you're doing. I think the American public is seeing right through this. You can see it in Joe Biden's numbers. We just need to keep up the momentum, and I'm optimistic that November, we're going to see our nation moving back in the right direction. I want to say thank you. I don't know if I have time to do questions and answers. Or
absolutely, if you do, sir.
Yeah, we have time to do that.
We know you're under time constraints, and what senator is not, but we appreciate it. Are there questions for the senator? Bill Hagerty.
Yes.
When we re-elect President Trump, take back the Senate, and increase our numbers in the House, what are we going to do with all these illegal people that are here, especially if the senators don't want to take them back over?
It's a huge problem. I talked to President Trump about this on numerous occasions. I was down in Mar-a-Lago with him about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we were talking about this very topic. It's going to take a massive effort by law enforcement. These people have entered the country here illegally. And we haven't even done any vetting or background check. It's going to be an enormous challenge. What I worry about is that something bad is going to happen before we can even get to that. But President Trump is very much dialed into this. It's an executive branch function. This, law enforcement and deportation is an executive branch function. He's just got to get the executive branch functioning again. And the Democrats have done a lot to hurt it. Not only structurally to hurt it, but they've demoralized our Border Patrol agents. They've demoralized our ICE agents. They signed up to do something they thought was good for America, and they've been ordered to do something that's very, very bad. And, I think Sheriff Cassidy will probably tell you the morale of law enforcement around the country isn't where it should be right now. It's hard to recruit. It's difficult to retain. But I think if the commander-in-chief is supporting them, has their back, we all have their back, we begin to change the message, we'll help them in turn do their job. So I was just going through the budget numbers yesterday. They have a category called mandatory spending. Social Security is in that, so is Medicare and Medicaid. But there are so many other things that they put into the mandatory spending bucket that aren't what we think about in terms of the promise that we make to the generations in the future. And that's grown to be almost the size. This other mandatory spending category is going to be almost the size of the bucket that has Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid in it. So I think we're going to have to look very hard at what we put on this sort of mandatory spending group that shouldn't be. If you look at the discretionary spending category, that's where all the focus is right now. But that's becoming a smaller and smaller part of the total budget because the mandatory expenditures are going up so high. But they put a lot of things, you may remember back in March of 2021, they jammed through that so-called Inflation Reduction Act. A lot of pieces of this is Green New Deal stuff. A lot of pieces of this they put into mandatory spending. That's because the Democrats had control of every branch of government and they were able to do it. So we're going to have to go in and unwind this and really, with a fine-tooth comb, go through and, as they say, bend the curve and get us back on track to break even and run this country properly. I was just meeting with some friends of mine in the House of Representatives this week, and they have a 7-year plan to get us back to a balanced budget. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to take time to get this fixed. You, sir? Yeah.
I'd like to know, what are we going to do about the, we get voted every year in early vote, and it always seems like early vote's got cheap to do with it. Even around the area here, early vote's got cheap to do with it. What do y'all think about it? It's happening. The early vote, what are we going to do?
So on the voting piece, I talk with President Trump and his team probably I'm down in Mar-a-Lago about every month or 6 weeks. What we learned in the 2020 election is that no court in America will overturn a race after the fact. If you're unhappy with the rules, and the Democrats have been interchanging the rules around at a state level all over the nation, you got to be fighting it now. President Trump's got a whole legal team that has been doing that, so I feel much better about the environment that we're walking into, even though we may not like the rules. I mean, I'll give you an example, Pennsylvania. And you'll sense my frustration. I spent the last 10 days of the 2022 cycle in 7 states campaigning for our candidates. I was looking at their polling data, and in my view, we were going to easily win 4 or 5 of those states. But the polling data didn't match up to the ballots that were counting at the end of the day. And here's what's happened. They changed the rules, and they tried to do it in the weather 2020. They tried to do it on a nationwide basis. We were able to stop that. But I'm going to give you one shining example of how it can be. It's Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, they went from very limited early voting, absentee voting, to unlimited. They mailed ballots out to every household. Ballot harvesting is now legal in Pennsylvania house to house. Depends on the county. It varies by county. And they went to a 50-day window for early voting. You all may remember this too. Dr. Oz, very late in the game, finally got Fetterman to agree to debate him. There was only a week left. By the time that debate happened, Fetterman had already amassed over 900,000 early votes. Oz only had about 200,000. Fetterman had a 700,000 vote lead. The most Googled question between that debate and the election day was, how do I change my vote in Pennsylvania? And you can't. Oz won on election day by 400,000 votes. Not nearly close enough. They had already won the election before Fetterman ever stepped on that stage. We can't get shellacked again like that. We have to be on the ground. Whatever the rule set is, like it or not, we've got to try to maximize against that rule set. So we're focused on it, I'm focused on it. We can't do every state. We have to have the resources to get deep enough to make it work. But I want to be focused on that very, very much, particularly Montana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that the new leadership of the RNC has this as their top priority to make sure these things don't happen again?
You know, I just got a call from the new leader yesterday afternoon. I was in an event like this, and I said, I've got to get back to you. So I'm going to talk to him this afternoon. We're setting up a meeting about it. But I chaired, it's called Bank the Vote. I chaired that at the RNC before. I'm doing it for the National Republican Senatorial Committee too. I chaired that piece of it. The RNC had not done anything to raise money. They're having a hard time raising money right now. But we need to make certain that this is a priority. They want to change the name of it. I'm fine with that. I just don't want to conflict. I want to be leveraging each other's efforts, not conflicting. Here's a reason why, because I kept asking myself, why haven't we been as good as we could be on this? And the reason is you use volunteers. You go door to door. You ask people if you can help with the ballot. Did they get their ballot? Can you collect their ballot for them? You go door to door in some of these places. That requires volunteers. Well, the consultants that do this stuff get paid on a percentage. And a percentage of zero is it's zero. So the incentives were in place. So we have now partnered up and hired an executive director. We're going to hire the people to do it, to manage it. And they've got to have teams of people on the ground. And we've been working through the Heritage Foundation. You probably know that. We lifted a division out of Heritage that has 20,000 volunteers around the country. We're training them right now to do this, to make certain that friends are signed up for either. In some of these states, you can have permanent absentee ballots, no excuses. That's not the case in Tennessee. But you can do that. So go to the nursing home, sign up for everybody there. At least they got a backup plan if they don't make it to the poll. And it's going to take state by state an effort, and we're going to have to rebuild that confidence within the GOP. And I'm sure there'll be people from here in Tennessee that want to help. We'll send them out to the states that